Hi, I'm Sadie, and this is the story of how my own mother tried to take my newborn twins, not with a knock at the door, but with a signature I never gave. While I was learning to swaddle and whisper lullabies, she was filling out forms at the courthouse, quietly rewriting my motherhood without my consent. No arguments, no warning, just paperwork that said she knew better than I did. But the thing about silence is, it keeps receipts. And the day she showed up at our church with a gift box and a speech, I stopped being her daughter. I became a mother who no longer asked for permission. Before we go any further, tell me, have you ever felt like the people who should protect you were actually preparing to replace you? If yes, comment number 1. If no, comment number 0. Because this isn't just a story about custody. It's about the kind of love that stands up quietly, but doesn't back down. They say new mothers get flowers, casseroles, and sleepy smiles. I got an envelope that nearly took everything. The day had started the way most do lately, slow, quiet, marked by bottles left drying on the rack and a baby monitor pulsing softly beside my teacup. Outside, March hadn't decided whether it wanted to be winter or spring, so the breeze smelled like damp leaves and wild daffodils blooming too soon. Delilah showed up just after lunch, as she often did now. She brought lemon loaf from Walter's Bakery, carefully wrapped in wax paper and nostalgia. She kissed my cheek like someone greeting a clerk at her favorite boutique, warm but distant, and cooed at the girls with just the right balance of wonder and commentary. "They're precious," she said, brushing a loose curl from Ava's forehead. "You must be so tired. This is a lot, especially for someone without much infrastructure." I smiled because I'd learned to. Because politeness is the last thing I can offer her that doesn't cost me sleep or spine. Caleb was out back, sanding the side rails of the crib he was building. He waved once through the window, but didn't come in. He knew better. As she was leaving, Delilah turned and placed something beside the teapot. "Just a bit of helpful paperwork, honey. No rush," she said, then kissed the air near my temple and swept out the door with her usual scent of roses and dry control. I stared at the envelope for hours. The girls napped. Caleb returned, kissed me on the head, and asked gently, "You opening that thing?" I shrugged and told him later. Later came after sunset, when the house was dim and the windows caught the soft pulse of porch light. I sat at the counter, holding the cream-colored envelope with the same care I'd given to my birth plan. It had my name in Delilah's looping cursive, the kind she only uses when she wants something. Inside, a typed form with highlighted fields. My name, the twins, a pre-filled guardianship petition. Temporary support assignment was underlined in faint blue. There was even a sticky note that said, "In case it helps." My chest didn't tighten. My hands didn't shake. Instead, a strange stillness settled in, like the air before thunder. I looked up at the photo on the fridge. Me and Caleb, laughing, holding 2 swaddled bundles. Real. Present. The envelope stayed on the table. I didn't speak, but I moved it to the far side, away from the bottles, the baby spoons, the hope. I stared at the signature line and felt my stomach drop. Not from fear, but from knowing. She was planning this all along. In a small town, brunch isn't just about pancakes. It's about positioning, and I was about to be placed. Lemon and lace had always been Delilah's kind of place. White trellises, pastel chairs, and everything served with a sprig of mint. She liked it because the tablecloths were pressed and the coffee came with real cream, not tiny tubs. It was late Sunday morning, and I was already regretting agreeing to meet here. But I showed up anyway, hairpinned, blouse ironed, girls asleep at home with Caleb. Delilah was already seated when I arrived, her napkin folded with surgical precision across her lap. Brielle sat beside her, phone tucked away for once. Maya came in a minute later and sat next to me, quiet as ever, but fully alert, like a lighthouse in the fog. Our waitress smiled warmly. "Y'all look like the kind of table that likes the cinnamon special," she chirped. Delilah smiled back. "We're more of the lemon ricotta crowd." I ordered plain pancakes. Delilah leaned in, eyes soft. "Sadie, I have to say, you're managing so well. It's admirable, really." Then, almost like a seasoning, she added casually, "Not everyone would be mature enough to share custody support. It's generous of you to even consider." I didn't answer right away. Brielle piped up, her voice too bright. "Mom's already talked to a judge she knows. It'd just be temporary, for structure. Like a co-pilot thing." I set my fork down gently. "Is that what you think motherhood is?" I said, meeting her eyes. "A paper you pass around?" Delilah's smile didn't falter. "Let's not get dramatic, sweetheart. It's just brunch." Maya shifted beside me. Under the table, my phone lit up with her text. "Need backup? I've got you." The waitress returned with handwritten checks. I glanced at mine, slid over a 20, then paused to add a $5 tip in cash. I stood slowly. "This brunch ends here for me," I said. "And next time, ask before you decide what I need." Have you ever been in a room full of family and still felt like a guest? When every smile feels rehearsed and every compliment comes with conditions? If you've ever had to bite your tongue just to keep the peace, leave a comment number 8 below. Now, let's see how much further this story will push before something gives. Brielle blinked. Delilah dabbed her lips like nothing had happened. But as I stepped away, something in the air shifted, thin and tight, like a bowstring pulled too far. As I walked past the table, I caught Delilah's face, still smiling, but her fingers clenched around her spoon. Some things don't arrive with a siren. They hide in forms and footnotes, and sometimes in your own medical records. Waverly Springs Community Pediatrics smelled faintly of antibacterial soap and crayon wax. The walls were lined with finger-painted suns and cotton ball sheep, and a slow jazz tune drifted from the corner speaker. Outside, last night's rain left the sidewalk shimmering under Monday's gray sky. I signed in at the front desk, Ava fussing quietly in my arms, while Lily slept soundly in the carrier. Nurse Tara looked up from her screen with a warm smile. "Hi, Sadie. We just need to confirm if Delilah Monroe remains as pending guardian per last update." The question didn't land right away, but when it did, it felt like ice down my back. I blinked. "I'm sorry. What?" Tara tapped her screen again, casually. "It's just what's listed here, from last week's admin update." Her tone was too light for something so heavy. Before I could form a reply, Maya stepped through the door, holding a pharmacy bag like she'd just stopped in on an errand. "Actually," she said gently but clearly, "that's incorrect. We'll need to see everything that was filed." Tara hesitated, then nodded, motioning us toward a side window. The printer clattered out 3 pages. My name, the twins. And there, in the section labeled Authorized Secondary Guardian, Delilah E. Monroe, status, pending review. We took photos. I circled her name in red ink with a borrowed pen. My fingers felt cold. On our way out, I paused in the waiting room. A young mom sat near the window, laughing as her toddler tried to feed her a goldfish cracker. Something soft clenched in my chest, a reminder of how easily joy can live beside vigilance. Outside, Walter Craig stood beneath his awning, sipping coffee from a paper cup. "Saw your mom last week," he said, nodding toward the clinic. "She and Dr. Avery were thick in conversation, real hushed, Persuasive, I'd say. She always was, back when she was Miss Apple Pie at the Harvest Fair. He smiled, then looked away. Not sure anymore. Back in the parking lot, Maya opened the car door and helped me strap Ava in. She didn't say anything until I closed the trunk. Maya turned to me in the parking lot and said, "You were there for me when I was drowning. Let me return the favor. Let's call Erica." People think choosing peace means avoiding the fight. But sometimes, peace starts with a signature and a lawyer who sees past your politeness. The stairs to Erica Langston's office creaked in a way that reminded me of my grandmother's house, just enough to feel familiar, not enough to feel old. The law office was tucked above a narrow bookstore that sold more bookmarks than bestsellers. Through lace curtains, March sunlight dappled the hardwood floor in quiet strips. A small pot of lavender sat on the windowsill. Next to it, a chalkboard bore the quote, "The quietest people often carry the strongest truth." Maya nudged me gently as we stepped in. She helped me file when I didn't know I was allowed to say no, she whispered. Erica looked up from her desk and stood. Mid-40s, glasses, salt and pepper curls clipped up, and a calm that didn't need announcing. "Sadie?" she asked, offering her hand. I nodded. "Thank you for seeing me on short notice." We sat. I reached into my tote bag and pulled out the cream envelope, the photocopies from the clinic, and the receipt from brunch folded like a reluctant memory. I laid them on the table one by one. Erica didn't speak. She watched. Then she leaned back slightly. "Do you still believe you owe her permission to mother your children?" The question wasn't sharp. It was clean. I blinked. I don't know what I believe, but I know I'm tired of feeling like a guest in my own life. Erica nodded, opened a folder, and slid it across the table. "We'll start with a cease and desist letter and draft a petition to protect custody. This isn't about drama. It's about boundary." Maya reached over, pulled a soft crochet cloth from her bag, and tucked it gently under my hand on the table. "You gave me ginger tea and a ride to the ER when my world cracked," she said quietly. "This is nothing." Erica handed me a pen. "You don't need louder words, Sadie. You need firmer lines." My fingers didn't tremble. I signed, slowly, deliberately. As I stood to leave, Erica passed me a folder. "File this near the crib, not just in your cabinet." As I left her office, I didn't feel like a daughter anymore. I felt like a mother who had stopped asking to be believed. I thought my daughter's blessing day would be sacred. I didn't expect to bless them by standing between them and someone I once loved. Waverly Springs Church smelled like lemon oil and hymnals older than I was. The wooden pews creaked as people settled in, and the vintage organ hummed a soft prelude. Community quilts draped over the altar in quiet celebration. Outside, the spring welcome fair was already underway, booths lining the walk with jams, crocheted baby hats, and jars of pickled okra. Pastor McKinley began the ceremony with a warmth I remembered from my childhood, his voice slow and kind. "Today we bless Ava and Lily, not just with words, but with presence, with witness, and with the quiet strength of a mother who chose them first." Caleb stood beside me, one hand steady on the stroller handle. Maya sat 2 pews back, her phone resting subtly on her knee, recording. Brielle was near the front, biting her lip. And then, Delilah. She arrived late, of course, well-dressed, not a hair out of place. In her hands, a small white box tied with ribbon. I kept breathing. Pastor nodded for me to step forward. I'd prepared a few words, something about community and grace, but before I could speak, Delilah rose. "Before we close," she said, her voice floating over the congregation like incense, "I'd like to say something, as their grandmother." A few heads turned. A soft murmur. My pulse thudded in my throat. I walked toward her, my heels soft against the wood, and placed my hand gently on her elbow. "This isn't your moment," I whispered. She didn't move, just held out the box. "E gift," she said. "Family keepsakes. Their initials are engraved." Before I could reply, Pastor McKinley stepped calmly between us, hands folded. "Thank you, Delilah," he said, voice gentle but final. "But today's words have been spoken." Delilah's smile faltered. Brielle stood, glanced between us, then took her mother's arm. "Let's go," she said quietly, and led her toward the doors. Pastor turned back to the room. Sometimes the holiest thing we can do is pause. Imagine standing in front of your whole community on a day meant to celebrate your children, only to shield them from your own mother. Have you ever had to choose dignity over silence, knowing the cost? If that moment hit something in you, comment number 9 below. Let's see what truth is finally about to surface. Later, he added my name to the bulletin board beneath Mothers of the Month. As we stepped outside into the fair, Mr. Craig tapped my arm. "Your mother left more than cookies at my shop last week," he said, slipping me a folded note. "Your lawyer may want this." The letter didn't come with fireworks, just a plain envelope, no return address. Inside was silence, finely signed. It was waiting in the mailbox, tucked between a flyer for gutter cleaning and a church bulletin I hadn't subscribed to in years. The envelope was cream-colored, same as the first one, but thinner this time, emptier in a way that felt full. I carried it inside, placed it on the kitchen table, and didn't open it until the tea had steeped and the baby monitor showed 2 sleeping hearts. Inside, a formal withdrawal. Delilah's petition rescinded. No contact for 12 months, by agreement. Signed not by her, but her attorney. Still, it was something. It was done. I slipped it into the same box where I'd kept the original envelope and the lavender sachet Maya had once handed me, with shaky fingers and fierce eyes. The ribbon still held. It always had. Later that evening, I sat on the porch, mug in hand, cool wood beneath my feet. Caleb climbed a ladder beside me, adjusting a lantern hook that had sagged through winter. He came down, slipped a pair of thick socks over my toes, and kissed my hairline. "That's the last thing on the fix-it list," he said. Maya arrived with banana bread still warm in its wrap and a folded baby quilt in tones of spring green. She didn't say much, just held me for a moment longer than usual, before stepping inside to hum along with the old stereo we'd dusted off for the occasion. Mr. Craig knocked once, left a cherry pie with no note, and walked away with a small salute. His kindness was always the quiet kind. When the music softened and the night finally settled, I stood at the crib, now glowing gently, under the soft lamp Caleb had rewired. I kissed Ava, then Lily, one hand over each tiny chest. "You're safe now," I whispered, "and so am I." Back on the porch, I opened my journal, dated a new page, and wrote, "One day, you'll ask why I did it. I'll say, because you were mine, not hers." Inside, above the mantel, hung a photo of the girls and me. Beside it, Caleb's handmade sign, "Here, we grow love." I once thought love meant proving myself. Turns out, it means never shrinking just to fit someone else's story. Some closures don't come with doors slamming shut. They come with a box tucked gently near a crib, filled with proof that you no longer have to explain yourself to be safe. I used to think peace meant staying quiet enough to stay welcome. Now I know, real peace means building the kind of home where your worth isn't debated. Kindness doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs truth, and the quiet courage to draw a line, even if your voice trembles. If this story reminded you of a time when silence felt safer than speaking up, I'd be honored to hear your voice in the comments. And if it brought you a little warmth, consider subscribing so we can keep meeting here where stories grow into healing.